Welcome, everybody. This time I'm going to call to order the special meeting of the Paradise Irrigation District Board of Directors, Monday, August 22nd, 2016 at 3:30 p.m. I'd ask right now that everybody in the public and board members please silence your cell phone. If you have to take a cell phone call, then please step outside to do so as not to disturb the meeting. If you'd all stand with me right now, we're going to do the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Georgiana, thank you, everybody. If I could have a roll call, please.
Director Canada?
Here.
Vice President Larry Duncan?
Here.
President Seth Peralta?
Here.
Director Cook Jacobson?
Here.
Director Canada, Bill Kellogg? Sorry.
Well, that was a bad mistake. I'm here.
Director Bill Kellogg?
Thank you, Georgiana. Public participation. Individuals will be given an opportunity to address the board regarding matters not scheduled on the agenda, although the board cannot take action on any matter not on the agenda. Comments will be limited to 5 minutes per speaker. Opportunity for public comment on agenda items will be provided at the time they are discussed by the board, with comments limited to 5 minutes per agenda item per speaker. We're going to get on to item number 3, open session, discussion regarding legal sufficiency of recall petition. This was brought about not by one of the directors. So if Manager Barber, if you want to give us a little rundown on this.
You didn't have anybody for public?
What's that?
You didn't have anyone for public?
Did I have somebody from the public? I'm sorry. I'm sorry I missed that.
Thank you. Good
Sorry,
afternoon, Board. Ward Habriel. A couple of comments to start off with. First, regarding Water Talk. Great publication again this month, but I'm curious that it says on the upper left corner of the back page that we have PID has received a special certificate of transparency for the year 2015. And I'm curious, I know you can't answer right now, but maybe sometime in the future, how did we get that? What's the scoring? Who all is judged in that? And what is this organization that issues that? And the second thing is that I think it's an excellent response, again, even more so than what was in the post not long ago, in regards to the treatment process and why not change. I think that should answer a lot of people's questions. It's well done, and it's a good place for it. I hope enough people read Water Talk to get the point. Thank you.
Thank you, Ward. Was there anybody else?
Isn't it on the wall?
It is.
It is.
Well,
Okay.
the other thing is, didn't we have it on an agenda item last month or
Last
just
year.
recently?
That was last year.
Well, I saw it somewhere in an article. Maybe it was in the Water Talk a couple months ago that explained what we did. And yeah.
Is there anybody else from the public who would like to speak to something that's not on the agenda?
I have just 2
You
questions.
could do your name and address, please.
Terry Wolfe, W-O-L-F-E. Terry is T-E-R-I, 5583 Newland Road, Paradise, California, 95969.
Thank you.
My first question is, why was this meeting scheduled for 3:30 in the afternoon rather than in the evening when more people could attend?
We can't actually answer questions, but we'll take it under advisement. It was scheduled to accommodate director schedules and other schedules that we had with staff.
But not the public schedule?
Sorry, we have to accommodate, sometimes we have to accommodate our schedule.
What about the
It
public?
was the availability that I had for today.
Was there not an alternate date?
We're not going to debate or discuss it. This is the time the meeting was set for. I'm sorry.
Is the public participation in the meetings not important?
It is important, and it looks like we have a lot of public participation here. I see a lot of the members of the recall board here. So,
My second question has to do with the financial burdens being placed on PID ratepayers with the increases. that seemingly were pushed through after a successful petition about a year ago, when you turned around and just disregarded the petition that succeeded. We are facing financial hardships in the next 3 years, increasing because of the rate hikes. I would like to know what PID is doing to cut your expenses, specifically salaries. The Post reported 34 employees of the PID make salaries in excess or a minimum of $100,000 per year. I was told by the secretary in person when I came to the office that George Barber himself makes over $186,000 per year salary, including benefits. Benefits include medical, dental, and vision. Are you reviewing your employees' salaries and or benefits and or bonuses so that we, the ratepayers, are not the only ones feeling the pinch of this? In other companies I've worked for, when times are hard, those at the top and even some of those at the bottom had our benefits cut, bonuses cut, etc. And I would like to know what, if anything, you're doing about that. 34 people making $100,000 a year, is that information, names, positions, etc., is that information that the public is entitled to by coming into the office?
I'm not sure if that's it, but
Not
we
individually,
can't,
by
not
title.
individually, by title, yeah,
Job classification.
by job placement, yeah.
There's
Yeah.
information by name, publicpay.ca.gov.
And I also would really like to see a non-board affiliated, independent consulting firm that has nothing to do with PID or the board come in and take a look at all the salaries, benefits, and bonuses by category of employee, especially increases, the amount, the percentage, bonuses, etc., over the last few years, and have that compared to other paradise-sized city businesses or agencies. It strikes me that in this economy where the normal people are struggling as it is, and now we've got this additional burden of rate hikes, what is PID and their staff doing to help out with all the new money you need?
Okay, thank you. We'll take that under advisement.
Thank you.
Anybody else from the public like to speak to something that is not on the agenda today? Not seeing any. We're going to move forward from public participation.
I would like staff to tell her where all, this information is all transparent. We just got an award for being transparent. I would like staff to tell her where all this information is. It's all
I
available.
think George did say.
And it's also included in our budget. So if you go on the website, there's a draft budget on there, all salaries and benefits, any type of employer expenses is listed detail by detail based on position.
Plus the water talk. Doesn't it give this the information too?
There's a public employee, it's, what is it? publicpay.ca.gov.
Yep.
And that has all public employee salary and benefit information on there for not just PID, but for all,
Every California government.
all California government except for school districts. They're not on there yet.
Except for what?
You could get your comparison there.
How about for cities the size of Paradise? That would obviously be very different from, say, San Francisco.
Yeah, so any type of city, if you can make a comparison to Paradise and find the city that you would like to compare it to, it's on there. Yeah.
Okay, anything else? Directors on that? Public participation? Okay, we're going to move to open session, discussion regarding legal sufficiency of recall petition. Manager Barber, back to you.
I'll start and then I'll kick it over to Dustin. The reason we're having this agenda item is I was given information confidentially that it's potential that the notice of intent to start the recall process that requires 10 signatures didn't have all 10 as registered voters at the time they signed the petition. It wasn't information for me to keep to myself. I thought it was something the board needed to hear and discuss, direct me or legal staff to dig in deeper, whatever the case may be, but it certainly wasn't something I was going to not bring to your attention, as I felt that was my duty. Dustin?
Well, I think a few things. One is we don't have confirmation of this. This is something that an issue is raised. Don't know if it's accurate or not. So I want, when you're considering a decision, if you are considering a decision, keep that in the back of your mind. Second, I've cautioned you before, and I'll caution you again that, my role is to advise the district, not necessarily the board of directors or staff of the district. And there's certain limitations on what I call electioneering. And there are gray areas here. It's not all black and white. But as an example, the district could not propose an initiative and then expend public funds to support it. That's what I mean by electioneering. And so when you're considering a decision today, if you are considering a decision, depending on which path you go down, I may ask that you pause and you at least allow me to look at whether this is a permissible use of public funds or whether it's something that we should steer clear of, the district should steer clear of. That's maybe another good thing to keep in the back of your mind is these limitations on electioneering extend to the district and the use of public funds. An individual, one board member, for example, or an interested member of the public could expend their own personal funds to pursue this matter. So I will likely have additional thoughts, and I'm sure the board will have questions and the public will have comments. So we'll try to wade through those as they come up.
Okay, thank you. Since we've never been through anything like this before, I really don't know what our next step should be in this.
I have
Maybe here.
a question about it.
Okay.
We're not to the point of,
We're not to public part yet, but you're more than welcome to get up there.
you talk about electioneering and you talked about use of public funds. And the way I saw this is that we've been, perhaps, I haven't seen the ruling on it yet. Has anything come out about whether they had enough signatures?
No, I talked to Canna Scrubs this morning, and it's a good possibility by Friday we'll know.
Okay. So I look at it and said, well, just like PID monitors all of its expenses, we should be concerned about whether we really have to spend $30 or $40 or $50,000 on a special election if indeed it's not required. And I'm a black and white guy, I'm fairly blunt. I don't see a lot of gray. And it seems to me like if a law was put in that required the proponents of this recall petition to be registered voters, two things. one, somebody along the line must have decided that was appropriate, the lawmakers. And number two, we should adhere to the law. I have a, just a feeling that somebody may bring up the fact, or maybe even a judge would bring up, but somebody may bring up the fact that this is a pretty minor thing, and there were a lot of people signing, and there could have been another 100 petitioners. The bottom line is the law calls for a minimum of 10. That's all the petition party went in with. They didn't have any extra. I understand that they talked at length with the Candace Grubbs with the election office down there. I think there was probably plenty of forewarning about what they needed to do, but they apparently chose to go ahead without either taking care of those details or just didn't care about the law. But like I said, the bottom line is, I look at the law, and if it makes this non-effective, if it negates this, then that would mean that, at least for this effort, we would not have to be burdened with paying the $30,000 or $40,000 or $50,000 in expenses. Then, of course, it would be up to the public if they wanted to reinstitute another recall petition. That's always there. But anyhow, I think the question is not whether we're electioneering, because I can understand why the board and the district and our attorney would not take any position on this, because they don't know what's best in truth. They don't know whether it's better for the two directors to be recalled or to stay. And they may have, individuals may have an opinion, but that is what we're not here to discuss. We're just here to discuss whether it's appropriate for the board to take an action, at least to initiate research from a legal level in order to avoid having this unnecessary cost, what may be an unnecessary cost. So I looked at this petition also. We have, George came up with one name that from a source that may not be a registered voter. And in my research of the people on this proponent petition, I was pretty disappointed to find out that there were some leaders in this group, because I have to assume that these 10 people are the leaders of the recall. But there may be a second person who is not a registered voter, and I don't know whether this is right or not, because there's a member of the board who is a convicted felon, and it's my understanding that convicted felons lose their right to vote. Now, California is a pretty liberal state, but and maybe that's a federal statute. I don't know. But it could be that there's actually 2 people who are not registered voters, and we need to research that. And then there are 2 additional members of the...
Don't call it board. It makes it sound like you're talking about us.
Oh, okay. 2 additional members of the proponent committee that have misdemeanor criminal records. One of them, which is for false statements and misrepresentations. And given that, that's maybe 40% of the proponents that were attempting to sway the public to their point of view. So that just makes me all the more concerned. And if this is a legal way for us to not spend that money, I would like to pursue it.
Okay, thank you, Director Hunt. Is there any other director who'd like to make any comments prior to me going to the public?
I would.
Okay, Director Jacobson.
I made a phone call to Project Manager of Elections, Marissa Brower, and I posed that question to her. And she said, and I'll quote her, 100% we have the 10 required petitioners. And so for me, it's also very cut and dry. Nobody wants the recall, obviously. It's going to cost us money. I mean, there are some people that do, but my position is real simple. If they've done everything qualified, if they've done everything to qualify for it, then they should have their vote. And if they haven't, then they shouldn't. I don't want to see the board have to spend $50,000 either, but it is what it is. So I think it's premature for us to be discussing what to do if in case they don't meet the required signatures. I think we probably should wait until we find out whether or not that goal has been met.
Absolutely.
And if that goal hasn't been met, then it hasn't been met. The law is the law. There's really nothing to discuss as far as I'm concerned. And if it has been met, the law is the law. The election goes forward. And that's all I have to say on it.
Cliff, I didn't quite understand what you said. You talked to the lady and she said 100% what?
She said 100%. She assured me that they did have the required 10 petitioners that were legal. And she quoted, I'm quoting her, she gave me her card. So, you know, unless something has come up that she's not aware of, or she's just not informed, all I can do is that's the source. When you hear a rumor, you go to the source. I went to the source, and the source said, no, that's a rumor, and it's not true. And I said, okay, then if it's not true, it's not true. I'm not going to expend any more effort on it until I find out that there's some validity to it. So.
I think what we're doing today is to see if the board wants to investigate it further. That's what I'm hearing. That's what
I don't think it's our position to investigate it, really.
I don't think so either.
I think the elections office, if they do their due diligence, that's their job. We have to hope that they're going to do their job correctly, and I would think that they would check both the petition signatures and their legality as well as the required signatures to put it on the election.
If the election board, if they did do that, then all they have to do is issue a statement stating they did.
Correct.
I haven't heard that from Candace, have you?
Exactly, and I think we should, we can request
That's what
that they confirm
I
that.
think we should do something.
But I don't think we have, it's not our,
No, it's not. Now, when I ran for town council, we had to have 20 signatures. And I was told by the people to be, Candace's office, that it's safer to get 30. Because what if one of the people, in good faith, they didn't live in your city, so therefore they can't sign it. So I always, whenever I ran, I always got 30, and I never had any problem.
well, apparently they chose only to get 10, and that was their choice. But if those 10 are valid, that's all it takes. And if they're not, then we should wait.
But I think we should get some sort of verification of that.
I
Since it's been done.
agree 100%. Before we spend $50,000, we want to verify that we have to. But
Right.
we need to wait for them to give us their,
I think
their answer.
Well, see, I keep having this dream that that they count the signatures, the 3,000 plus, and they come up one short. So when I heard about this, I thought, well, maybe my dreams are coming true. But no, that's a dream.
I can't, Mr. President, I can tell you when I spoke to Candace this morning, I didn't get that firm of a response. I didn't get an answer to the question of whether the 10 were valid or not.
And you spoke directly to
I
Candace?
spoke to her today, so I think absent some type of written request or something, she wasn't going to answer off the cuff.
But we can give a written request without going to legal, right? Wouldn't you think, so we wouldn't even have to spend any money there? Or would you?
Only if you direct me to.
That's what we would do today.
Well, this is the project manager for the elections department there. If she doesn't know what's going on, who does?
Well, hopefully her
I called
boss.
her up and asked her to send me a document to show how they verify the signatures. And I got this display thing, and I'm an accountant. I couldn't even figure it out. I turned it over to George because I didn't understand it at all. So I've always felt that when I never do get straight answers when I talk to the election board.
I got a pretty straight answer.
Well, but I mean, the thing is, you also got a straight answer from Les Schwab saying that they'd never gotten an order from us. And they've gotten many orders from us, so
Well,
it depends on who you're talking to.
That's a different issue.
You know.
Bill, you have
But
any
I think we should at
Well,
least do it.
wait till the president recognizes me.
Okay.
Bill?
I don't know, I thought I'd come here and not say anything, but from two sources, unnamed, they've talked to the registrar of voters, the same lady that George talked to. And we're told that 10 people have been verified and cleared. They took 2 weeks to do background checks. And they were all registered voters and all okay. And when I saw this thing still up on the agenda, I sort of wondered about it. I thought, well, we're going to waste and pay some attorney's time that Ken is so concerned about, just being at the meeting and having this discussion about it. I think it's actually a little embarrassing. I'm, of course, in favor of the recall from the very beginning. I don't participate in it. I don't go to the recall meetings or anything, and you folks don't always tell me what's going on, just to keep me out of the picture. But I favored it, and I honestly think $40,000 or $50,000 is a good investment in the future of Paradise Irrigation District.
Interesting theory there, Bill. In the welfare of the irrigation district. Okay, that's a good one. By the way, your Facebook page says contrary to what you're speaking right now, so there's been a lot of posts.
Are you going to recognize somebody eventually?
Lorraine? Yeah, when the
Not to
directors are
public
done.
comments.
The directors go first, and then we go to the public. I'm sorry.
I think everyone has spoken.
Oh, she's going to run our meeting now?
I'm just waiting to see what she had to say there. So it was my understanding that that we had a verbal understanding when Director Jacobson asked you directly, how far was this going to go? If you didn't get the signatures you needed by June 17th, was it going to go any farther than that? And your direct answer here in this boardroom, and I do believe Trevor was here and recorded it, that if you didn't make it by June 17th, you had no interest in costing the district extra money, and that was going to be the end of it. It would be dropped, and that would be it. Now, I'm pretty sure you guys had the signatures that you needed on June 17th, but you chose for different reasons. And anybody that's got a brain on them and knows how elections work or how ballots work, then figured out how you guys are doing this. But you directly said, and as one of the highest representatives here on the recall, you've been here for all our meetings, you said directly to us you had no interest in costing the district money, and that if it wasn't done by and submitted by June 17th with the valid amount of signatures, that it was not going to happen.
Okay, let me answer that question, being as you posed the question to me.
Absolutely.
At that particular meeting,
Excuse me, are we starting public participation?
I'm going to
I'm
start
just-
public
I'm-
participation right now.
So the time clock will start now.
Yes.
I'm answering a question. This isn't what I'm speaking to. I'm answering a question. I do not want to
Oh,
be
and
timed
this is
on
good.
this.
That will be part of your 5 minutes. If someone needs to carry on for you, then we will go from there.
Before I start answering that question, I would like to say to Mr. Barber that you have called a meeting together to discuss something that is actually outside of your jurisdiction at this point. Once the petition is validated by having the number of signatures, then that would be the time that you could speak. So you've called a meeting here on a rumor. That's very upsetting to a lot of people that are sitting here on a rumor. On a rumor. Okay, I'll go back and...
We actually had a different meeting. We have the closed session meeting is why we had a meeting.
I'm using his own words. He said it was a rumor.
We just added this on to the agenda.
Okay, to answer your question, you know that I'm a novice at this. This is one of the first projects I've taken in the public forum. I had extremely good help from the election board, everyone down there helping and assisting us. When I was in here answering the question about would we continue on for a special election, I was sincere when I said no, we wouldn't. But I learned that night, thanks to Larry Duncan, that July 17th or June 17th wasn't our actual drop-dead date. I thought that was. I didn't read the further part down that says we still had 120 days. So when I answered that question, I was answering to the fact that we would not start up another recall. Because in my mind I'm thinking, are you crazy that we would go through this again? So I was in the mindset that no, we weren't going to go to another recall election, but I was answering a different question. When we got to that point, some things that we had encountered via help from people in the community that knew people on the board or knew people in a church, we began to be restricted from places where we could collect signatures. And so our count was going down, and we knew that we needed to collect signatures up to the deadline. As of this point, I don't know if we've made it. It's going to be close. We needed that extra 4.5 weeks. And it wasn't justifiable on the answer that I had given to what I thought was a different question that I should be held accountable for, but I'll still be held accountable for it. The other thing that's been mentioned is that we don't mind charging $50,000 for a recall election. We have never been in this about the money. You folks just spent $50,000 on a piece of property and didn't blink an eye. That's what we're talking about, is that you're spending the money, but when it comes to the community spending the money, ours is a worthless task and yours is an honorable one. But my closing on this is that in the sense, and the attorney might be able to address this too, is that the jurisdiction is with the Butte County Elections Office. It's not with this PID board and starting to do investigations and having people gather to discuss rumor or said rumor. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi. Excuse me, all of you. I'd like to take accountability. I'm one of the gentlemen that Ken is talking about. I am the gentleman. I pleaded guilty to something I did not do. I paid over $100,000. It's been a rough time, and I've done it. I had 2 years of anger management, did the whole thing. It was domestic violence to a disabled person. She came at me and hit me in the leg, and I pushed the headrest of it. And I'd been friends with her for a long time. She wanted to marry me. It was a long story, but I'm totally accountable for that. And I paid full price. I'll pay the rest of my life. I had to get my Social Security early. I almost lost my house through foreclosure. I'm in bankruptcy 13, and I'm, in fact, not guilty. But regardless of that fact, I pleaded guilty because I was in jail. I had Feaster, the guy that killed somebody, break my nose. I also got my rib broken by the Aryan Nation guys inside the thing. I couldn't get out of the prison part of the jail there. I was in the prison part. So I'm just taking accountability right now, and I'm paying full price, and I'm the gentleman.
Thank you.
Hi, Mike Zuccolillo. As echoed before, this meeting is pointless. I mean, we have no verified information. Actually, we got the information from Candace that they're all 10 are good. Of course, that could be, you could say it's a rumor on our side. But, in an era where the public is concerned about transparency, holding a meeting based on a rumor seems ludicrous. And, there's been this issue about whether the thing costs $30,000 or $40,000 or $50,000. And broken down, when you talk to members of the public, this would basically cost each customer anywhere between $3 to $5 as a one-time charge to have a vote. That's been proposed when we talk to people collecting signatures, and it doesn't really matter what the 10 proponents, what we think, what our opinions are. The fact of the matter is that over 4,000 signatures were collected. Those signatures are in the hands of the county elections office, and it's their job to verify it. And when they come back and they say, yeah, you got it, or no, you didn't, then you can hold your meeting and figure out if you're going to call the election or you're going to drag your feet and force the county to do it. But other than that, I have no idea what the point of this, what action would even be taken tonight to waste more attorneys' time on researching nothing. I just don't get it.
Thank you, Michael. Up to the podium, please, Loretta.
I've led a boring life. I've never been arrested. I haven't been to the recall meetings. I don't even come to these meetings anymore. They got so boring. But I wanted to thank Cliff. He's the only one that said anything that made common sense tonight. You don't know what you're talking about. Everybody's jumping on some kind of bandwagon to scream and yell and holler. And we all need to settle down, see what the real story is, and then have a meeting to resolve whatever comes of it. So please stop and think, you guys. And let's be nice to one another, Ken Hunt. Don't yell at us, poor old public.
Thank you, Loretta. I'm not sure that anybody understands. We never said we were going to have any kind of action tonight, or that we were going forward with something, or that we are trying to sabotage your list. But it says action may, you can hold that up all you want, Michael, because it says action may be taken. And if you can't understand 4 little words, then action may be taken.
It has to be on there.
That doesn't mean it's going to be. It just means it may be. So, I will say the recall effort has been a less than admirable venture down at ACE and the other places. And this might get me into trouble, but, I went there with my little boy. Someone came up to me. They told me all the bad things that I had done, just listing off one lie after another about the things that I had done. And my little boy looks up at me and he says, isn't that you, Dad? And I said, well, yes, it is, son. And then that person just hung their head and turned around and walked away. And then someone said to them, you don't want to ask him to sign the petition. But basically, the paper I was shown, the things that I was told, they were all things I hadn't done. I wasn't on the board for a couple of them. One other thing I have not done, none of the directors have done the major thing. None of us had voted for a $20 million project yet. That just simply hasn't happened. But yet, I was told that. That's what I was doing. And I go to ACE quite frequently on the weekends, buy stuff, and every time I just kind of stand and listen to what was going on. I must say, a less than admirable. I was even explained to by Lorraine that some of the information that they were saying might not be accurate, but we tell lies all the time, so maybe it just evens out in the long run. I can't think, we're all documented as to what we say, so I can't think of one time when we've told lies in one of these meetings, but yet that's what was told to me, and that was the explanation that was given for why it was okay to tell lies about us. So, less than admirable, I must say. So, Lauren, please get up.
Thank you. Lauren Harvey. I'd like to say that I'm truly appalled, and I don't use that word very often because I'm not very educated. But I'll tell you one thing. I find it amazing that part of this board can sit here and whine like babies because we did a recall. When you guys did a 218, we beat you fair-handedly, and what did you do? You immediately ran one again to get something through that the public had already spoke and said, no, we do not want it. And you guys, I don't know how clear I can make this, you guys went ahead and jammed it down the public's throat. So we had no other recourse than to say, the board members are not listening to us. Obviously you're not listening to us. You don't have a clue what's going on by the way you're talking. You're You're making these accusations, somebody's a felon, somebody ain't a felon. Well, listen, fellas, if they're qualified to vote, they're a registered voter, it doesn't make a damn to you what they are, and you shouldn't be worried about it. Just like I'm not worried about what your background is. You shouldn't be worried. If they're a legal voter, they're a legal registered voter. I don't know where you guys come off thinking this sort of stuff. Do I ever bring up your death accident on Skyway? Do I ever bring that up in here to you?
Lauren,
I never do.
Lauren,
but yet you bring up somebody on the 10 signatures is a felon. Now, obviously,
Mr. Harvey,
obviously
not only
it's
could I
not
hear
me.
you talking about it in the back of the room there for everybody in this room to hear, okay, it wouldn't be the first time I've heard you talk about it in this boardroom.
Well, let me
so
explain.
don't bring up something.
Let me explain something to you. I'm bonded
is
by the
not
state of
part of this,
California.
not
I own a
one
business
bit.
that's bonded, and it's not me you're talking about. So if you think you are, you're bad mistaken.
I have no idea who the person
and
is.
when I tried to serve you with the recall papers, what did you say to me? You said, I don't want you to know my address.
Yeah.
I'm worried that you know my address.
You already knew my address, and since cars were already driving by my
But
house
did you
at
not
half a
say
mile an
that
hour,
to me? You don't have a right to say that to me. You work for the public. Just like
You had the information prior to asking me.
I put down my address when I signed up to be one of the 10
You
members.
had the information
And
prior to
you're acting
asking
very
me.
immature, and you don't apply the same rules to yourself, or you wouldn't have ran the 218 back to back. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Mr. Harvey. What I don't think that anyone gets that thinks that we just re-rammed a 218 down you is that someone has to pay for these state-mandated regulations that we're facing.
4,000 people thought you made a mistake. I can tell you
Well,
that right
4,000 people haven't been in these meetings and reading all the documentation and understanding. Apparently, when the state was at the meeting, not a lot of people understood that night, that they're not going to give us leniency. They're not going to keep extending it out. They don't want to see us dumping water back into anywhere that runs back into Magalia Reservoir or Little Butte Creek. But that doesn't seem to be something that's too apparent. So we voted to take care of the state-mandated project that had to be done. Yes, sir.
Just to carry on the direction you're going there about taking care of the past the 218 and the money that needed for the water process plant. The state guy let it out of the bag that you guys had knowledge since 2001 that evening there at the Performing Arts Center.
2010.
2001. You guys may not have known it exactly then, but you guys knew about it, and you knew about it long before 2010. You had $10 million at that time to address it. You could have got better loans. You could have got better bond stuff to work for it to deal with. But you chose to do this building, all the structure, all this infrastructure over here at a cost more than you've said it cost out of Mr. Duncan or Barber's general meetings to the public. He's given 2 or 3 different figures on how much it cost. Every time it escalates. Also, you spent money on the meters. You went and spent all that money on that under your direction that you could have taken the time to address this problem, because this problem was here long before those were. But you chose to go that direction. That's what most of the people are upset about.
You do realize I wasn't on the board then. So you're holding me accountable for voting for the meters. I wasn't on the board.
Company, because, quite honestly, the director is supposed to take care of the manager over here and keep him on point.
Okay, I wasn't on the board then.
You've been on point for how many years here?
Since the end of 2010. Okay. I wasn't on the board when the meters were voted for.
When this last vote went in, this last one here, you were here. You had an opportunity to sit here and say, no, we should have addressed this other stuff, but you went right along.
Interesting. You do also realize that when you say there were $10 million in restricted funds, I don't know if anybody gets what restricted means. Those were promised to loans that we already had, other things that were already committed. There was never $10 million that we just blew through and spent it on George's wages, or maybe we went on vacation somewhere.
If it was restricted?
Well, Kevin can give you an
You could
exact.
apparently spend it on normal OE spending.
If you guys took the time to find out, Kevin would give you an exact where the dollars went, where the $10 million started, how it went. $2 million went to this loan for final payment. When you have a loan, the final year's payment, correct me if I'm wrong, Kevin, is kept in a reserve fund. It looks like there's $10 million there. It looks like there's $2 million there. But that funds cannot be touched. They cannot be done with anything but pay off that final year of the loan. When we paid off loans for the old treatment plant, the non-existent treatment plant, we're still paying on the current one. But Kevin can give you a rundown of where the $10 million went. And it was never $10 million. It was very nice that everybody thought there was $10 million there, but
Right out of his
restricted
mouth.
funds means
Right out of his
restricted.
mouth.
You heard it right out of his mouth.
Yeah.
I guarantee
It's right.
you didn't.
It's on video online on one of his workshops.
Where he explained where the restricted funds went.
Went from $10 million and back in 2010.
Restricted funds.
The fund had worked itself up. The money that was back, some of it was in restricted, some of it wasn't. But there was $10 million available.
How much was in unrestricted? Out of that $10 million, how much was not? $4 million. Okay, so the $6 million went to pay loans. What did we do with the $4 million? Kevin, just a kind of a quick run through.
Part of it was borrowings, the meter project.
Yeah. So,
I would say that the gentleman is somewhat correct in that there was 10 million sitting.
exactly.
But 10 million did go to the meters. I mean, 5 went to the meters, and there was a portion that was for the corporation that we had borrowed. So we had borrowed those funds for specific projects. So those funds needed to be spent on those specific projects because that's what they were borrowed for. So 5 million of that was for the meters. Probably 2, maybe. I don't remember the exact amount because it fluctuated as the meter project was being done. Was for the corporation yard. There was some restricted, so there was some sitting there for payment of the final bond payments. I believe at that time it was $1 million was sitting there for final bond payments. There was another one that was a final payment for a DWR loan that was in there, about $250,000. The $4 million was depleted down due to the fact that there was projects that were paid out of cash instead of going for rate increases through those times. And then the drought really did affect our cash flow because we weren't collecting as much money as we had budgeted or anticipated.
And the 2011 rate increase was less than what was recommended.
Well, in the research that we've done and looked at here, myself in particular, I'm speaking for myself right now, I've seen enough that I don't want any more money going out of my pocket or the public's pocket in the direction that you guys have been going. You guys don't care that it's whose money it is. You don't respect it. You don't honor the people, the town that you come from. You just let somebody make a decision for you.
Well, that's not true, but that is your opinion.
It's my opinion, and it's a lot more truthful than you when you're talking about the people out there in the street at the Ace Hardware accosting you, as you put it.
I didn't say accost
Give me a
me.
description of that individual, if you can remember.
I know exactly who the individual is. It's not going to be shared here in this room.
You know, we're really
They're
getting
sitting
off
right here,
point
but we
here.
are off point, exactly.
Yeah.
Okay, anybody else from the public that would like to speak to this?
Yeah, of course. Sorry. Look, I think it's a sad state of affairs. This is our centennial year, and frankly, Party in the Park is not enough to acknowledge 100 years of the successful operation of a water company, not always under the best of circumstances, especially during extensive droughts. And yet, through staff and boards, over the years, we've been able to do it for 100 years. I think it's pretty sad that we've gotten to this point. The word mockery goes around. In fact, it was in the ER on the editorial page Sunday for several reasons. But for one in particular, what it actually means is the water providers lost a lot of money since they didn't sell as much water due to those darn conservation targets, and they're tired of that. What happened? water companies raised their rates, including here. You've heard a couple of comments already about that. But one of the biggest things has to do with whether or not there's been a mockery between the board and the public. It's the public's water company. The board has said it, staff has said it, it's gone on that way for years and years. I've said it before, shame on the public that wasn't here 15 years ago, 12 years ago, 10 years ago, 8 years ago. As Dan and I sat here as the only two people from the public, 5 or 6 years ago for many, many meetings. Shame on the public for that. However, you made the point. Had they been better educated, which is partly your responsibility and the staff's responsibility and has come across in the last couple of years because of Water Talk, we would be a little bit better off. But the previous comment was you tried to pull a sneaky with the 218 thing. You don't admit to that, of course, but the end objective was reached. That money then goes into the general fund from the rate structure increases over the next 3 years. Had the capital project been paid for out of a bond, the money would have been designated just for that capital project. As it is, because I've looked at the 16-17 budget, as some other people have, we know that in the general fund, you're also allowed to spend it on additional personnel. I understand there are 5 vacant positions that will be filled. That'll be paid for from the general fund. Besides that, there are also some salary increases coming. That'll be paid for from the general fund. It got there because of the rate structure change against everybody that holds a meter, including the costs for the capital project. Had it been done with a bond, you wouldn't have had all that extra money in the general fund. And frankly, I think that would have been a better choice and much more satisfactory to me as part of the public and a lot of other people whose point so far kind of is they don't like the way you're spending money. I think that's kind of a simple opinion, but it's a lot of the feedback I've received. You know, I've reported to you from a lot of people who've told me because they're kind of afraid of boards. I've heard some people at council meetings get shut down in a hurry. I don't mind speaking on behalf of others, and when I've said something that's not the pleasant thing to hear, I don't mind taking the knock for that. But I also am not too happy about some people that don't accept the response when the response is pretty straightforward, which is why I've passed on so much information about the water treatment process and how we would have to go about changing it. Some people are still very ignorant about that, even though we've made it as clear as possible. From what Cliff said, from what staff has said, from the research I've done on my own. Frankly, I don't know where we're going to go with that. But I do think we missed the boat a few years ago when it came to educating the People's Water Company and what else we could have done. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ward. Anybody else from the public? Yes, sir.
Yeah, my name is Wally Schmidt. I live on Pence Road. I've been to a lot of meetings since January, and I think I've learned a fair amount about something I really had no particular inherent curiosity about. But I get a little perturbed when I hear members of the public claiming that the Proposition 218 procedures were somehow foisted upon them because I was in California when Proposition 218 was voted in. It was a hugely dangerous tool put in the hands of voters who, many of whom apparently don't do their homework. But it forces public organizations, governmental organizations, to put any kind of rate change in front of the public. And it gives the public an overwhelming opportunity to deny even a reasonable rate change. And, you know, the first time I had any knowledge of the structure of this organization was, I think, whatever your first meeting was at the Performing Arts Center, which was totally enlightening, and I walked away asking my wife what kind of a community we'd moved into. But it was obvious to me when the first 218 challenge failed that you were going to have to come back for another 218 challenge. All I was doing was sitting there listening, and it was clear to me that that was what was going to have to happen. So when I sit here and I hear people say, "Oh, you pulled a fast one on us," perhaps the cleanest word I can think of is bunk.
Thank you, sir. Anybody else from the public that would like to speak? Loretta, you've already spoken. I'm sorry. Dick, we can't do twice. We can't do twice. I'm sorry. You get not on the same subject, yes. Well, we're talking about one subject here, so. Not seeing anybody else from the public wants to comment right now. Okay, we're going to close the public portion of this. Directors, in light of what we just heard, is there...
Well, being back to us, I wanted to mention one thing about what we're doing here today. We're here today for a closed conference with legal counsel regarding existing litigation. You know, people try to find ways to criticize us for us doing our work. So one of the ways you come up with is say, you're jumping the gun. Why even look at this now and spend all this money because we haven't got the vote back yet? And clearly, it's both. I know Cliff and I have spoken about this, and I think the rest of the board is on the same page. We aren't going to give instructions to legal to do any work for it until we get past these milestones. One milestone is going to be whether there's a valid number of recall petitions. Then we would look at taking a step to go further, perhaps, and perhaps not. But right now, since we're already here and assembled, why should we go and spend another $1,000 or $1,500, whatever it cost us for a board meeting, to come back in right after we hear the results to entertain what we can do? We get a 2-for-1 here, folks. So we can talk about this, maybe take action, maybe not. I'm going to actually make a motion for a limited amount of action because I think that we can do this without spending any money, legal-wise. We'll just have our general manager make a telephone call. But as such, I wanted to make that statement in regard to the criticism about why we're here and trying to hide it from you people out there. That's not the case. The other thing is, the time of the meetings. We have many people who don't come down here at 6:30 p.m. because our meetings last until 10 or 11 or 12. And they don't have the physical stamina to come down. So sometimes, but our structure is 6:30 p.m. meetings. But on special board meetings when we can get in here and take care of business, sometimes we take it earlier in the day when we can all get together. I make a motion that we do two things. We authorize George or his staff to contact Candace Grubbs and get a written response about two items. One, a registered voter that we think is on the petition illegally. I'd like to confirm that that person was a registered voter prior to or on the date the petition was received by Candace Grubbs' office. I understand she's a registered voter now. And item number 2, whether or not a convicted felon can register to vote in the state of California. Those should be just simple black and white questions they should be able to answer, put it in writing, send it back to us. I think that's going to dictate which direction we go.
I'll second it.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Further discussion? Director Kellogg? Anything?
I can't top you guys. I'll just let it be.
Okay. Director Jacobson?
Well, I think rather than make it personal, I think we just have a duty to ask that they confirm that there are the legally required number of eligible registered voters and petition signatures for it to go forward, and get that in writing. They have a responsibility and obligation to confirm that. And
the 10 registered?
Quite personally, I don't care who is or isn't qualified. If they don't have the required, then they don't get an election, and if they do, then they get their election, and that should be pretty straightforward.
So the 10 registered at the time of submission of
At the time.
At
Not-
the time.
Not after the fact. If the requirements are that at the time they have to be registered, and there needs to be 10, then they have to confirm that. And if at the time they need to have the required total number of signatures to put it on a special election ballot, then they have to have that as well. And if we can get that in writing, they can confirm that in fact they have met both of those requirements, then it should go forward. If they can't confirm that, then it shouldn't.
Okay. Director Duncan?
I don't care what the words are of the motion, I just feel that we should get a verification. Since the question's been brought up, that's why I seconded the motion.
Okay, Director Hunt, I think you're all...
I'm talked out.
I'm talked out myself. Roll call vote, Georgianne.
Director Hunt?
Yes.
Vice President Duncan?
Yes.
Dr. Jacobson?
No.
Dr. Kellogg?
No.
President Corolla?
Yes. Passes with a vote 3-0.
3-2.
I'm sorry, 3-2. Directors Kellogg and Jacobson being the noes. Okay, thank you all. I appreciate your input on that. We are now going to move to a closed session item, conference with legal counsel, existing litigation. And as you can see from the Bay Delta proceedings, if you want to hang around, you can see what we're going to decide when we come out of that, or where our direction was.
I haven't protested.
No.
That's why I said if they want to stay till...
On litigation?
I don't even know.
I don't think it's